My name is Jeremy Burton. I'm the Executive Director of the Jewish Community Relations Council. We have many people who are here with us today to speak, to bring words of comfort. Our purpose here today is to move beyond the private consolation that so many of us heard yesterday. Our interfaith colleagues, our Christian and Muslim partners, our political leaders, law enforcement who are reaching out to members of the Jewish community within hours after the events unfolded yesterday morning to express their concern and their support, and to bring that out into the public space so that all of us could feel that. We are all today holding each other, and we're being held. And that is what today is about, and it's a real privilege and an honor to see so many of you here to gather to be together as one community, to stand in solidarity with the people of Pittsburgh, to stand in solidarity with the Jewish community in a very difficult time. We're going to start with Rabbi Tova Spitzer, President of the Mass Board of Rabbis, and Rabbi David Hellman of Young Israel of Brookline.
In Psalm 34 we read, Karov Hashem l'nishberei lev, ve'et dakei ruach yoshia. God is near to the brokenhearted, brings healing to those whose spirits are crushed. God is with us here today as we mourn with our brothers and sisters in Pittsburgh. God's presence is with us in the form of our friends and allies from the Christian and Muslim communities, elected officials, and all who stand with us today. A little later, we will hear the names of and offer prayers for those who lost their lives yesterday. Today, I'd like to offer a prayer and teaching for those of us who are here. At Shabbat services across the world yesterday, we read in the Torah of our ancestors, Abraham and Sarah, their great hospitality, their tent open on all sides to visitors. And it was just this Jewish commitment to welcoming the immigrant and the stranger that inspired the shooter to attack a Jewish sanctuary. My prayer is that even as we are shaken and afraid, we never lose sight of that commitment, nor the deep sense of connection to the vulnerable and the stranger that lives in our tradition and in our hearts. 2 centuries ago, at a time when many Jewish communities in Europe felt weak and vulnerable, the great Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav taught this. V'da she'adam tzarich la'avor al gesher tsar ma'od ma'od, v'haklal v'ha'ikar shelo yitpached klal, which translates as, and know that when a person must cross a very, very narrow bridge, the main thing is that they not be overcome by fear. And the important word here is yitpached, a reflexive form of the word fear. Because of course we are afraid, but we must be careful to not further frighten ourselves, to be overcome by fear. The answer to hatred is not to turn our synagogues into armed fortresses. It is not to hunker down in fear of the other. The answer to violence and ignorance is to remember that God's presence is with those who are vulnerable, and that is what gives us strength. The answer is to welcome the embrace of those who stand with us, to continue our work for a more loving and just society, and to remember that even though the bridge sometimes feels very narrow indeed, we can and we will emerge whole on the other side.
Amen. Yesterday's horrific shooting is a raw, open wound for the entire Tree of Life Synagogue and greater Pittsburgh Jewish community. But it clearly has affected all of us who are here today. We are here because we are shocked, or we are saddened, or perhaps we are suddenly afraid. And it is incredibly powerful to see all of you who are here today, and I just want to thank every person who is here. The tragedy has become even bigger. It's become part of a national dialogue, part of a soul searching of the entire country. And yet, nevertheless, despite all of that, despite all those big issues which should be discussed, we must not forget that this tragedy is a deeply personal one. There were 11 people who woke up yesterday morning, who got dressed, went through their morning routine, went to synagogue for Shabbat morning services, to pray or to see friends or to celebrate a happy occasion, and they did not come home. Yesterday in Squirrel Hill, Pennsylvania, 11 people were murdered. Each of them had a unique life story. Each of them had a different smile and personality. And each of them leaves behind a close circle of family and friends. And we now take a few moments to remember and pray for each of the victims. And we ask for your silence and attention as we remember Joyce Feinberg, who was 75 years old. Rich Gottfried, 65 years old. Rose Mallinger, 97 years old, and a survivor of the Holocaust. Jerry Rabinowitz, 66 years old. Cecil Rosenthal, 59 years old, and his brother, David Rosenthal, 54 years old. Bernice Simon, 84 years old, and her husband, Sylvan Simon, 86 years old. Daniel Stein, 71 years old. Melvin Wax, 88 years old. And Irving Younger, 69 years old. Tehei Nishmatan, Surot B'tzur HaChaim, may their souls be bound in the bond of eternal life. V'yu zichroneihem bruchim. And may all of their memories be blessed.
We now welcome up the Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Charlie Baker, the Mayor of the City of Boston, Marty Walsh, to be followed by Senator Ed Markey.
Good afternoon. Can I ask all of you to hold the hand of the person next to you? I talked to a lot of my friends yesterday. One of them was in Pittsburgh about this, and several of them sent me the same piece of knowledge from the Talmud. And I just want to share it and then comment briefly on it. Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. The pain, the horror, the anger, and the outrage that comes with Pittsburgh and a shockingly large number of events across the globe are a constant reminder to the rest of us that there will always be work to do. And we should never abandon that. And most importantly of all, in the end, I do believe, as I'm sure you do as well, that good always triumphs over evil. That faith matters. and then the mosaic that is the United States of America, which was founded fundamentally, most importantly, on the idea and the notion of the freedom to practice your faith and religion, whatever it might be, that we will always support, defend, and remember that this country is about freedom, it is about faith, it is about community, is it about diversity, and most of all, it is about remembering every time someone is lost that there is work to do and that none of us should ever abandon our commitment to build a better and a stronger and a more inclusive Commonwealth and a more inclusive country. God bless you all for being here. Thank you.
Today, we pray with all of our hearts for those who were lost yesterday. We pray for the families who are beginning the long journey of grief in Pittsburgh, in Boston, across this country, across this world. We pray for the Tree of Life Synagogue in the city of Pittsburgh, in the Jewish community, its police, its first responders, its medical providers, and as the mayor of Pittsburgh, Mayor Peduto, said today, we are stronger than hate. I had a conversation with the mayor an hour ago to let him know that I was coming to a remembrance at Boston Common. He wanted to say back, thank you, Boston, because in our time of need, Pittsburgh was there for us. But I have to say something. I was listening to the governor in the prayers, and I was looking at the crowd, and a little joy, strangely enough, came in my heart. You can't see it, but from here, the crowd, you look like the top of a tree. And you look at the top of a tree in the springtime that keeps growing, and more leaves come and growing and blooming. And from the time that we started speaking here 7 minutes ago or 8 minutes ago, there's easily 500 more people here, and they keep coming. And people keep coming, and the crowd keeps growing. So I want to thank you for that. We're here today because we're letting the Jewish community know that we're standing with them here in Boston and around the world. And we're also standing here today to fight back on what's happening. Because I agree with the governor, what he just said. And I just said at City Hall Plaza a moment ago, talking about who we are, where we are as a country. But it's important for us to hear that we send the message to Pittsburgh and to the people there and let them know that they're not alone. And they'll never be alone again. And to the survivors that are here today, you are not alone, and you will never be alone again. Because that's who we are as a city, that's who we are as a state, and that's who we are as a country. And we need to keep passing that message along. This is not a failure yesterday of civility. This was an anti-Semitic mass murder, what happened yesterday in Pittsburgh. Driven by scapegoat and hatred, enabled by high-powered weapons. There's no conversation of evil, but we need to continue to take action to stop it. We need to continue to look for the courage, and we need to pray and stand with the good people that lost their lives yesterday. They were at a synagogue to welcome new life. And they were targeted because they welcomed the refugee and the immigrant. They were the helpers. And like many of them in the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh and in Boston here today, that's what we're going to continue to do. We're going to continue to welcome people and open our lives. people of Pittsburgh, from the people of Boston, we love you, we support you, and we will always stand side by side with you.
Yesterday, 11 people lost their lives at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. And as a nation of all faiths, we wept. To attack the innocent and the faithful in their house of worship is the ultimate act of hate. We condemn this anti-Semitic act of barbarism. We pray for the victims of this terrible act of terror, for the families, for the officers who ran into the danger. But we must recommit ourselves to the long-held values and pursuits that we know as a nation are true. In the Jewish faith, the pain of the individual is connected to the pain of the community. But so is the healing. So we must go forward with Tikkun Olam. We must work together to heal this world now of the hatred, the violence which is being encouraged in our country. We know that we cannot make America great again by making America hate again. As Americans, we believe in the freedom of speech, not the freedom of hate speech. We believe in a free press, not in the freedom to attack the press. We believe in the freedom of religion, but not just one religion, of all religions. We stand with our Jewish brothers and sisters today and every day. My wife is Jewish, but we stand with all religions today. We are a nation of tolerance and diversity, but this uniquely American endeavor to welcome and celebrate these freedoms is what is under attack. Yesterday in Pittsburgh, this week in Kentucky, in Charlottesville, in Charleston, we are being torn apart by bigotry and division when we know the United States stands for unity and for freedom. Armed security guards are not the answers in synagogues. More guns are not the answer. Hate has no place in a house of worship, and neither does an AR-15 semi-automatic. The great Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." So instead of stoking hate, instead of giving in to anger, let us be instruments of love. The kind of love embodied by the First Amendment. The kind of love embodied in the words inscribed on the Statue of Liberty. The kind of love we find in the Bible. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. Love always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. This nation is facing a reckoning, a crossroads, at which we must choose to animate our work and our words with hope and not hate. We need to look into our hearts and hold ourselves accountable for the nation in which we want to live, the nation which we want to give to generations yet to come. We cannot build a wall of hatred around this country with no more Muslims or Mexicans or immigrants. shining city on the hill. We are the shining example of tolerance and diversity and progress. We are the home of the abolition movement right here. We are the home of the suffragette movement. We are the home of the same-sex marriage movement. We are where freedoms were born, and where goodwill and equality are. And for Boston, we send the message of the and to the whole rest of the world, we stand with you in this pursuit of a peaceful, tolerant world. Thank you all.
Later, we're going to hear from several more of our constitutional officers of Massachusetts, but I want to specifically acknowledge and recognize the Speaker of the House, Robert DeLeo, who is with us today as well. We have many members of the Christian and Muslim community and leadership. I know that there are leadership of the Lutheran and Episcopal diocese here, as many others, and forgive me if I haven't seen you and don't acknowledge you. It's only because so many people here. But we are now going to hear, we're very privileged to be joined and grateful for this partnership and alliance and support. We're going to hear from Cardinal O'Malley, followed by Reverend Liz Walker of Roxbury Presbyterian Church.
My dear friends, this morning in Catholic churches all over the world and in many of the Protestant churches, the gospel passage that was read describes Jesus on a pilgrimage. He's on his way to the temple to celebrate the Passover. A very stark reminder that the church is the daughter of the synagogue. Today we are here, all of us, as congregants of the Tree of Life congregation in Pittsburgh. We feel a solidarity with our brothers and sisters there. Our hearts are filled with sadness for the suffering of those individuals who unjustly lost their life, for their families, their friends, their community. But there's also a great sadness in our own hearts that in our country we have not been able to overcome hatred and prejudice that results in these senseless acts of violence. And to think that that congregation was targeted because of their openness to receive the stranger, which is a biblical command that we all should embrace. Last year, when we were struggling to be able to deal with a lot of the crises of refugees in our own community here, Barry Schrag called us up and said, we want to help. We don't have direct services like Catholic Charities, so we're going to go out and raise money so that we can hire lawyers to work with you at Catholic Charities to help those immigrants. That's the idealism of the Jewish community. We are all proud to be here today and proud to see how many Bostonians have turned out to be a part of this demonstration, to show that we will not tolerate that hatred and prejudice and the violence that is destroying innocent lives, but rather that we stand together to build a community, to repair the world, to bring peace to our community and help to turn a crowd into a community, into a family where we all see each other as brothers and sisters, where everyone feels welcomed, appreciated, and valued. God bless all of you. Thank you for being here.
There is a text in my tradition in the New Testament, in the Gospel of John, that says, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it." And sometimes that text doesn't seem to be enough because there is so much darkness in our world, particularly lately. And the darkness in Pittsburgh yesterday really troubled all our souls and broke all our hearts. How could light overcome that deep, evil darkness? But I remember a story about Robert Louis Stevenson when he was a little boy. He was very ill, and he was always in bed, very sickly. And one night he got up from his bed to watch the lamplighter light lamps on the street, 19th century. And his nanny said, "Come back to bed, you're sick, you can't do this." And he said, "But I'm watching a man poke holes in the darkness." And I think that sometimes that is the best that we can do. Poke holes in the darkness. Sometimes our personal lights don't seem bright enough because it's an overwhelming piece of world that we found ourselves in. But my message to Pittsburgh, my message to all of you, is that best I can, weary and weak as I am, teary as I am, I'm going to do what I can to poke holes in the darkness. And together our lights will be stronger. I represent Roxbury Presbyterian Church. I represent the community of Roxbury. We stand with you in solidarity. Please stand with us and do the best we can in poking holes in the darkness.
Next, we will hear from Rabbi Mark Baker, President of Combined Jewish Philanthropies, Boston's Jewish Federation.
The Pittsburgh Jewish community, the Jewish people, and our world lost 11 precious souls yesterday, and 6 more were injured. And we're here today together, our Jewish community and our greater Boston brothers and sisters from every faith and background, because we feel this loss as if it is our own. We're devastated. We're angry. We're heartbroken. Any of us who is part of a faith community, who finds comfort, joy, and peace in community and in prayer, knows it could have been us. As the shock of this horrific event and all of the emotions that come with it settle in, we offer the Tree of Life congregation and the Jewish community of Pittsburgh our support and our love. We cannot properly express our gratitude to the first responders who risked their own lives and nearly lost them trying to save the lives of others. It's not lost on many of us that the name of this synagogue is one of the most powerful symbols in the Jewish tradition, the Tree of Life. It reminds us of the beauty and tranquility of the Garden of Eden. It is a symbol of our Torah, which represents the culmination of thousands of years of values, wisdom, and spirit that are our roots and are our life force. For thousands of years, the Jewish people has endured through joys and through sorrows, because our Tree of Life has reminded us of where we come from and of what matters most. Our resilience enables us to overcome even when some try to break us. Our empathy moves us to stand with one another in times of suffering and loss. And our faith inspires us to shine our light in times of darkness and to keep striving to create a better world. Today, around the country and around the world, Jews and our allies, like all of you, are doing what we do. We're coming together. We come together because we know that when anyone or anything tries to strike fear in our hearts, connecting to one another and uniting in love are forms of resistance and activism. The congregants of Tree of Life Synagogue were attacked as they stood in prayer and celebration, as new parents welcomed their baby into our covenantal community. To attack a community at a moment like this is not only an egregious and intolerable act of anti-Semitism, it is an attack on our very humanity and on every one of us. We will not retreat in fear. We will keep coming together, keep raising our children, keep holding fast to our tree of life. Thank you so much to our Greater Boston community, to all of our leaders and our partners in the interfaith community for standing with us. The outpouring of love and support from our elected officials, from law enforcement, from all of our faith communities, and everyone here today is comforting and truly uplifting. Plans are in the works for a Sabbath, a Shabbat of solidarity across the country and the world coming up this next Shabbat that will join together synagogues and communities across the country and the world. Please be on the lookout for more information and consider joining together in this powerful expression of compassion and hope and solidarity as you've joined with us today. Thank you so much for being here.
We speak of two communities connected. We speak of Jewish communities all over the world connected. That couldn't possibly be more embodied in this moment between the Jewish communities of Boston and Pittsburgh. As with our next speaker, Ariel Stein is a student at Boston University from Pittsburgh and a member of Tree of Life congregation.
Wow.
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for being here today. My name is Ariel Stein, and I am a proud member of Tree of Life congregation in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Today, I have no speech. I am in mourning along with the entire Pittsburgh community, both Jewish and non-Jewish. It is often hard to find the words in a situation that hits so close to home. As a young girl, I grew up going to Tree of Life congregation, sitting alongside my bubby, my dad, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, all of whom have gotten married at Tree of Life congregation. On Yom Kippur, I looked forward to praying alongside my father as I wanted to be sealed in the Book of Life. It is a place where I connected with my Judaism. Yesterday, those same people who prayed to be sealed in the Book of Life were killed. The entire Pittsburgh community is devastated, but there is so much love. And there is so much love here today with all of us. A year ago, I traveled to Auschwitz with some students from Boston University. I learned all about the struggles of the Holocaust, about anti-Semitism, and never would I think that my community would be the face of such an act. But it is up to all of us to love each other, to want to love one another, and to stand up for the other in society. The thing that makes Squirrel Hill so precious to me is that it values all types of people. On every storefront in Pittsburgh, and Squirrel Hill specifically, it says, "Love thy neighbor." It says it in Arabic, it says it in Spanish, it says it in Hebrew. And although Squirrel Hill suffered the largest blow that could have ever happened yesterday, I know that we will bounce back, and I hope that all communities can embody loving thy neighbor as well. Thank you.
We do love her, and we love that entire community. I want to recognize two people. It was mentioned before, the solidarity between the Catholic community and the Jewish community last year. We're very appreciative to have with us today Barry Schrag, the retired senior, not necessarily retired, CEO of Combined Jewish Philanthropies. And the Reverend Bernie Stansfield, the president of Greater Boston Interfaith Organization. We now welcome up Congressman Joe Kennedy, to be followed by Attorney General Maura Healey.
We gather this afternoon to mourn those we lost. Daniel, Joyce, Richard, Rose, Jerry, Cecil, David, Bernice, Sylvan, Noah, Irving. Parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters, husbands and wives, whose absence cuts us to the core. We gather in gratitude to the first responders whose bravery ensured that more lives were not lost that rainy morning. We gather to nurse a familiar wound torn open once again in our country. And though we have felt it before, it does not hurt any less. It does not sting any more subtly. It does not pierce any softer. Prayers interrupted by bullets. A peaceful Sabbath celebrated by those called to repair the world, shattered by hatred. A congregation united by trauma no one should ever endure. A country united by horror that no one should ever accept. And so we gather here in solidarity with the Jewish community of Massachusetts and around the world, who have seen their synagogues, their schools, their streets, their community centers mercilessly targeted these last few years. And we hold their hands today. We pledge our hearts to yours. And we say that we stand with you. And most of all, we gather in strength to say with one voice that we will not sit idly by while hatred finds quarter in our United States. That we will not allow the country that we love to be shackled by the dark forces of anti-Semitism, supremacy, and prejudice. And that we will not accept a government that gives cover to anyone who seeks to scapegoat, to target, or attack any brother or sister among us. Because here in our Commonwealth, in a sacred city on a hill, the guidance of those who first approached these shores is etched deeply in our blood and our bones. Quote, we must delight in each other, make others' conditions our own, mourn together, labor, and suffer together. That edict runs deeply through Boston's veins. It defines our proud Jewish community that has, for generations, set an example of compassion, of justice, and of grace for our country to follow. And so, while this morning we may feel helpless, and though we may feel heartbroken, that we wrestle with disbelief and despair, we gather again in a city on a hill. Gather no matter the God of our prayers, the country of our origin, the color of our skin, or the gender of our spouse, to show that we still will rejoice, mourn, labor, and suffer together. That ours is a humanity deeply shared and a country deeply connected. That we are not afraid to be open, to expand and accept each other. That we will not cower to hatred, violence, bigotry, or fear. And that we are better than this, braver than this, bolder than this. That we can make space for those who are suffering, will make room for those who are in peril, and make comfort for those who are sick or shattered or broken. That we can protect each other. We can look after each other as our own, no matter who tries to tear us apart. So we recommit ourselves, our city, our Commonwealth, and our country to the vision that has lit our way. A place where hate has no home, where those who seek shelter are welcomed, where those who welcome are rewarded, and where our shared labor leads to our shared joy. We stand together.
If there's one message today, it seems to me it's this. Ariel, you have a congregation in Squirrel Hill, and you have a congregation here in Boston and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I want to thank all in clergy, our faith leaders, JCRC, ADL, my colleagues in government, and all of you for coming out today. You know, I'm reminded of this story from World War II. Some of you may know this story about a U.S. Army sergeant. He was held in a Nazi prisoner of war camp with his men. At one point, the Nazis came in and asked him to identify which of his fellow soldiers were Jewish. He refused. They put a gun to his head. He refused again and said to them, "We are all Jews." His words are as true now as they were then. Today, we are all Jews. I am heartbroken for the victims, the survivors, the families of Pittsburgh, and of the Jewish community there, all across this country, who are in mourning. My office and I stand in solidarity, in support, and in love with all of them and with all of you. But this was not just an attack on the Jewish community, on one temple or one community. This was an attack on America. It came at the end of a week that saw hate-filled attacks across our country. In this country, America was founded on the ideal that all human beings are created equal worthy of dignity, worthy of respect, that all of us deserve to live and love and pray in peace. As Americans, we are to embody the values of the Jewish people, of tolerance, of inclusion, of welcoming the stranger because we were once strangers ourselves. That's why when I look around today, I see leaders and people representing every background, every faith, every community, and it is a beautiful and wonderful thing. We are here today, people, to say not here, not at a temple, not at a supermarket, not at a school or anywhere else. Hate has no place in this country. Anti-Semitism has no place in our culture and no place in America. My hope is that that message is being heard loud and clear here and all across this country, particularly by those who have intentionally sought to divide us, because that is what is going on in this country, and that is so wrong. There is a difference between right and wrong in this country, and it is time for all of us to speak up and fight back. You know, when you raise your kids and you send them off to school, you talk to them about name calling, don't you? You teach our children that words matter, that words have consequences, and words matter and words have consequences. And that's why we're going to send a message today to all of those who continue to seek to divide us, who attack the truth and free press, who traffic in hate and conspiracy in this country, that we are going to come together and triumph once and for all. That's what this community always does. That's what our nation and all in government must do. You know, 2 years ago next month, I set up a hate crimes hotline in my office based on some of the complaints that we were seeing. And I want you to know that my office is still here. Please call us. We want to know of any reports of threats or violence against our Jewish brothers and sisters or anyone else in this community. I called the Attorney General, my colleague in Pennsylvania, yesterday and offered our continued support and resources. And as a matter of law enforcement, I know I stand in solidarity with local, state, and federal officials here in committing to do all that we can for the sake of public safety. But public safety does not mean arming our houses of worship. And it doesn't mean arming our schools. It means coming together to speak out, to stand up for love and tolerance. Today, as we pray that the memory of those lost will forever be a blessing, let us hope that it inspires us to end the madness once and for all. Strong gun laws save lives. Government leaders must speak and act with empathy and understanding. We must seek to have those who represent us represent common purpose for the common good and not seek to further divide us. There is no room for incivility, no room for prejudice, bigotry, or anti-Semitism in this country. Today is about love. Today is about solidarity. And as I look out at this beautiful crowd, as dismayed and dispirited as I am heartened and buoyed by the love and compassion within all of you. And I listen to the little voices of children in the park behind us. That's what this is all about. That's what gives us hope. That's what gives us inspiration. And that's why I'm confident that we will today and every day forward do the hard work that needs doing, and we will get to where this country should be. God bless you all.
want to acknowledge and welcome the presence of Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito and to invite up the Treasurer of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Deb Goldberg.
I am you. You are me. We are one big family, and we are suffering. We in Massachusetts are no different than Pittsburgh, and Ariel expressed that to us so beautifully. But we are a bigger we than the Jewish community. Yes, anti-Semitism in Massachusetts in the last 3 years has grown incredibly. 46% more incidences last year. 86% in our schools. Newton, Needham, not remote cities and towns in places that we've never heard of, in our own communities. But that's because of what we've seen. 3 years ago, I heard a drum roll begin. I heard a drum roll where I had seen this playbook before. It didn't start in 1938. It started in 1918 in Germany and proceeded through the next decade where there was economic pain. Economic pain like we see in the Midwest, like we see in the South, like we see in New Bedford, like we see in Lowell, and no one was helping with this pain. And then along came the perfect answer. We will make Germany great again. That was the answer. And first it was the dwarfs, and then it was the mentally disturbed, and then it wasn't the German Jews, it was those Russians and those Poles. We know what all this means, and we know we are the other. That we are in solidarity with the Muslims, that we are in solidarity with the Latinos, that we are in solidarity with these wonderful people behind us of every faith and every color and every sexual preference. This past week, the Justice Department said transgenders are not a sex to be honored before the Supreme Court. Well, they are! And I, for one, will not tolerate this, and neither will you! This is a wake-up call. We will take our country back. When my husband was brought here by Hias, and this perpetrator purposely attacked Hias. Hias meant possibilities. Hias meant freedom. His family was killed by the Nazis. They were escaping an uncertain future and knowing that death is at your door. In 1957, he came into New York Harbor, and his father, Julius, said, Mickey, because it was German or Hebrew for Michael. Mickey, you must come up. You must see the Statue of Liberty. This is life for us. This is possibilities. This is what makes America great again. Not what we've been hearing, but loving, inclusion, welcoming. That is who we are, and that is who we will be. So thank you all for being here. Thank you all behind us for being here. We will not tolerate hate.
I'd like to invite up Anthony Barsamian, President of the Mass Council of Churches, and Sheikh Yasser Fahmy of the Islamic Society of Boston Cultural Center.
Brothers and sisters, as you hear those church bells ringing behind you,
I will remind you that we need to give Thanksgiving. In a few short weeks, we should give Thanksgiving. But today, we are all Jewish, as the Attorney General said. Christians, Jews, Muslims, we are family. We share your love, we share your anger, and words do matter. And now, teach your children well that we need to change the discussion, change the dialogue in America. But we can only do that together. And we, the Massachusetts Council of Churches, stand with you as brothers and sisters. We love you all.
Good afternoon. In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful, to whom we belong and to whom we shall return, we ask him to send his peace and blessings upon all of the righteous prophets of God, from Abraham to Moses to Jesus to Muhammad. Brothers and sisters, the Sabbath in the Jewish tradition is meant to be a day of observance, a day of abstinence, and a day of introspection. That is what it is meant to be. But sadly and tragically yesterday, for our brothers and sisters in the Jewish tradition who were in a synagogue, in a place of sacred worship, had to be the victims of a vile hatred, a disease that is embedded, unfortunately, in many hearts, of racism, of anti-Semitism, of xenophobia, of bigotry. These are diseases, sadly, that are rooted in many of us. These are diseases that reflect and manifest in the most vile of ways, unfortunately. What we saw yesterday was a vile act of terrorism against our brothers and sisters in the Jewish faith. And what I want us to do this afternoon is I want us to engage in our own individual Sabbath, to take a moment to introspect, to think, and to reflect upon our own conditions. Because sadly, the rhetoric, the propaganda, the ideas that have seeped into so many of our spaces are tearing us apart, and they are manifesting in the ugliest of ways. We have to know with certainty that as human beings, we are inherently good. We don't need to hate. We don't need to be separated. We don't need to attack one another. We don't need to fear each other. That is not at the essence of our human condition. When the angels asked God, God, are you going to place on this earth those who are going to sow corruption and spill blood? He said, I know what you not know. God knows something about our nature. I want to say something to the Jewish community. As a Muslim, I love you. As a Muslim, my back is your back. As a Muslim, my shoulder is your shoulder. And as a Muslim, my chest is your chest. We have to drown out the propaganda. We can't be taught and told that we are not meant to live with one another. We cannot be taught and told that for I to survive, you must die. That is a toxic rhetoric. For someone to walk into a sacred space, a synagogue, and say that all Jews must die, that is a lost soul that has been infused with demonic impulses. We need a prophetic spirit to drown out that darkness. We need to walk in the footsteps of our righteous predecessors who knew a thing or two about mercy, compassion, and love. That's what we need. We need to revive those spirits. We need to educate ourselves and our children. We need to love one another and hear one another with deep empathy. Because we all want the same thing. We all want the same thing. And I want to give a parting message to my young Jewish brothers and sisters. As I would teach in my own congregation, I want to tell you this. Today, wear your yarmulke a bit tighter. Don't let anyone tell you to fear your faith, to fear being a Jew. Don't ever let anyone tell you to cower. As I would tell my own congregation to wear their hijab tighter or their kufi tighter, I tell you to wear your yarmulke tighter. Be confident, be strong, hold your head high, and we are with you. Millions of Muslims across the world are with you, and I promise you that, and I know that, and that's what we were taught growing up. May God bless us and bless the country of Islam.
There are many Jewish organizations here today. In particular, when times of crisis happen like this, there's a group called the Jewish Emergency Management System that leaps into action, and they leaped into action yesterday afternoon, so I want to acknowledge the other members of that coordinating group, Combined Jewish Philanthropies and the JCRC, along with the Synagogue Council of Massachusetts, and our next speaker, the Regional Director of the Anti-Defamation League, Robert Treston.
When I heard the news, my mind went straight back to the bar and bat mitzvah of my own children. I am sad, scared, and angry, but most of all, I am motivated to do something. Because it could have been here. It could have been any synagogue in America. And in recent years, places of worship from many faiths have been targeted for violence. We are all vulnerable to hate-motivated violence. And yesterday was an attack on all of us. Every religion, every state, city, town, community, our country, our democracy. America was founded by people seeking the freedom to practice their faith, the freedom to enter a space, to pray, to reflect, and to celebrate, without fear, without intimidation, and without violence. And yesterday, a sacred and safe place, a synagogue, a house of worship, where regardless of faith, we feel safe, secure, free. Suddenly it became the most dangerous place in America. Religious freedom was shattered yesterday. It is a horrific reminder that unchecked anti-Semitism can manifest itself into the targeted killing of Jews. Yesterday, the oldest form of hate became the single most deadly attack on Jews in the United States. Anti-Semitism is not a Jewish problem. It is an American problem. It is a global problem. It requires all of us to be part of the solution. Upholding and defending the values that define Boston, that define the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, that define America, means confronting anti-Semitism and hate at its root. It cannot be done by a single person or group. It requires a commitment from everyone to stamp out the embers of hate to ensure that we never experience the inhumane cruelty that we saw yesterday again. If we do not make this commitment now, if we do not act now, if we are complacent when we leave this place where we are supporting one another today, then the anti-Semites, then the haters have won. And no synagogue, church, temple, mosque, gurdwara is safe. Because it starts today, it starts with us, and it starts right now. There are a couple of really important people that are standing behind everyone that you see here. And one of the things that some of us don't always realize is that our law enforcement officials, they're here today. But they are actually here every single day, 24/7. So I want you to give a warm welcome for Constitutional State Police Colonel Gilpin, and Boston Police Commissioner William Cross.
This is impressive. I think, folks, what we're doing here today is we're sending a message that evil cannot write the narrative. Evil cannot write the story of our country. We can't let that happen. We write the story of our country. It's not evil's history, it's our history. Our story says that everybody made this nation great, and that under the tenets of the First Amendment, that we all should have freedom of press, speech, and religion, and not let evil tell us that you can't do that unless it's their way. We're stronger than that, and we're fortified in our spirit to assure evil that you're not going to dictate policy to us. As the good reverends and all of our faith-based leaders behind us can tell you, the body is just a shell. The spirit lives on. The spirit that was taken, spirits that were the bodies that were taken by the evil cannot kill the spirits. Transcended borders to come here in Massachusetts to strengthen our spirits to continue to do the right thing. And that is to continuously fight evil and send the message that we will continue in solidarity. Look around you, folks. Look behind me. You have our political leaders, our faith-based leaders, our law enforcement, Colonel Gilpin. I just want you to know that our first responder family across this great nation will not let you down. We will fight with you every step of the way to ensure that freedom and equality is for everyone. A bit of history. In 1965, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King stood right here at this bandstand with 22,000 people, where we all know he practiced under the tenets of Gandhi and many other religious and peaceful men and women. He sent a message strong and clear. We will not be defeated by evil, and that we must stand together and continue to do that fight. I just spoke to the good congressman back there and reminded him of that fact, and he says, wow, 50 years from now, we should have got this right by now. But guess what, folks? We've been fighting this fight from the beginning, right? And again, we must show as a nation, as a people, as a Commonwealth of Massachusetts, that we're going to make sure that everybody hears our voice. And that's that voice that rings true of solidarity. Don't let evil dictate to us. We write the story.
Before we go to a concluding some services led by our clergy, we have one final speaker. Today is about solidarity. It is solidarity between Boston and Pittsburgh. It's about solidarity between Jews and other faith communities. It is also solidarity coming from our brothers and sisters in Israel, and we're privileged to welcome the new Consul General of Israel to New England, Ze'ev Boker.
Dear friends, on behalf of the state and the people of Israel, we stand together with our brothers and sisters within the Jewish community of Pittsburgh and the United States against a brutal act of anti-Semitism. Our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families and the law enforcement agents injured during the horrific event. The gathering today demonstrates the resilience of our community and I am honored today to be among you. It is heartwarming to face this gathering, hundreds and thousands of people, and the support of our allies and friends here in Boston, Massachusetts, and New England. Thank you.
Before people drift away, I just want to point out that we're standing amongst an exhibit of art that are the faces and images of Holocaust survivors, including some who are known to us and part of our community here in Boston. These emblems of our history as a Jewish people, of the experience we've had in the past century, are also a reminder of the values for which this congregation in Pittsburgh was targeted yesterday. The alleged perpetrator specifically sought out and targeted them because they opened their doors to immigrants and refugees and partnered with Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. We have a call to action. It is to observe our faith proudly, whatever that is, to ensure that we all have the right to feel safe and strong in our communities and our houses of worship, and to fight for our shared values and to not give up on them just because others commit violence against us. If we give up on our values, if we fail to keep welcoming the other, if we fail to keep standing with immigrants and refugees, if we fail to keep standing with Muslim brothers and sisters and all of those who are being targeted in our society, then those who attacked yesterday will have won. That is our call to action. That is the work ahead. And to conclude today's vigil, I invite up Cantor Elias Rosenberg of Temple Emmanuel in Newton, and Rabbi Sharon Cohen Anisfeld, President of Hebrew College.
In the Jewish tradition, the memorial prayer is called El Malel Rachamim, where we ask the exalted, compassionate God to grant infinite rest in the sheltering presence to the souls of all our beloved ones who have gone to their eternal home, asking that their souls be bound up in the bond of life and they may rest in peace.
Ametzei menochanechana tachat kanefei Ashkinah memalo de kedoshim utarim ezor araki amazirim לנשמות אחינו בני ישראל שנהרגו ושנפלו על קידוש השם וגן עדן תהיה מנוחתם. בעל הרחמים, הסתירם בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים, את נשמותיכם. נחלתה וינוח בשלום על משכבותיכם ונאמר אמן.
Friends, we recite Kaddish here today to honor the memories of those whose lives were taken yesterday morning. Zichronam livracha. May their memories be for blessing. We recite Kaddish to offer comfort to the mourners, to stand with them, to help sustain them in the face of this unfathomable loss. We recite Kaddish to lift up God's name, which means what it has always meant, even and especially in the darkest of times. To say yes to life in the midst of loss, to hope in the midst of despair, to love in the midst of hate. To say yes to the deep truth of our connection in the face of those who would tear apart the fabric of our communities, of our country, of our precious world. We do this together now with words of prayer, and we will need to find the strength to keep doing it when we leave here. We are shaken, but our commitment is unshakable. God help us to summon compassion in ourselves and each other, to summon courage in ourselves and each other, to hold each other and lift each other up with these strong hands and outstretched arms. Kaddish Yatom, Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבא מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, אמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, אמרו amen. May the one who makes peace in high places make peace among us, among all the people, Israel, among all who dwell on earth, and let us say, amen.
Thank you for being here. This concludes our program. And may the memories of those 11 taken from us yesterday be for a blessing and for a call to action.